Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about the law of demand, and I'm hoping that as we go through this discussion, I'm hoping that as you did your reading, you found that the law of demand is really nothing new. It's not as if the heavens opened up and some great revelation came upon you. We're going to talk about something that you've probably been dealing with all of your life. Now, when you read the chapter on the law of demand, you saw a very, very long formal definition, and we have to do that because that's an economics class. In reality, the law of demand tells us this: when the price of something goes up, the quantity demanded, the amount we're going to buy, is going to go down. If the price of something goes down, quantity demanded is going to go up, everything else held constant. Okay, now you know this, you've lived this. If the price of coffee is $1.25 today, and it goes up to $2 tomorrow, I'm not going to drink as much coffee. If the price of soda at the bookstore today was $1 and tomorrow you go in and the price of soda is $2, you're not going to drink as much soda. Conversely, if the price of coffee goes down, if yesterday the price of coffee had been $1.25 a cup and it goes down to 50 cents a cup, I'm going to drink enough coffee to float a battleship. If the price of soda goes from $1 a bottle down to 50 cents a bottle, you're going to drink so much soda that we're going to have to peel you off the ceiling. And that's basically the law of demand in a nutshell. As the price rises, quantity demanded falls, everything else held constant. As the price falls, quantity demanded rises, everything else held constant. Now let's kind of mirror what you found in your reading in this chapter. We begin by talking to individuals to find out how many items they would buy at a very specific price, because that's kind of the key to the law of demand. The law of demand deals with one particular good at a time and the number of items that will be purchased at a particular price. So it's a very specific item and a very specific number of items that will be purchased at a price. In our textbook, I think our authors talked about some guy named Bob who was trying to get online access to video games. I'm going to use a different example because it's one that I can see more clearly, and I'm hoping it's something that you can also then picture and remember. Let's talk about that person who is going to buy soda. The thing we'll very often do is just talk to an individual and say, listen, if the price of Coke was $5 a 12-pack, how many 12 packs would you buy in a year? And we might hear that they bought 10. At $4, how many would you buy? 20. And we would go through this. Once we take that information and put it into a more organized manner, we can then use that information to do some graphing. What you saw was a discussion of the demand schedule, and that would look something like this, where we've got this very specific listing of price and quantity demanded combinations. From there, we can take that information, put it on a piece of graph paper, and begin to do our graphing work. So, for that $5, 10, 12-pack combination, we've got point A. Point B represents $4 and 20 12 packs, and so on. Once we've got those points on the graph paper, you can connect them, and that's going to give you your demand curve. Now, remember some of the reading you did earlier in our book. You will see that the demand curve is a downward sloping curve, and that's because there is that inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded, right? If the price goes down, we buy more. If the price goes up, we're going to buy much, much less. And so that's going to lead to that downward sloping curve. Now, I very often have this question: what's the difference between quantity demanded and demand? Here's the difference. The law of demand deals with quantity demanded. Quantity demanded talks about very specific numbers of items that will be purchased at a very specific price. And when you did your reading here, you saw our authors do some graphing related to the law of demand. Now, their graph is going to look a little bit different than what I do. Not that their graph is incorrect. They did the graphing to kind of mirror the reading you found earlier in the book, as we talked about the slope of a curve and looked at some different examples. And so when you saw the graph that dealt with the law of demand, what you found was some additional lines. They had lines going over, lines going down, again to help kind of mimic what they did earlier in the book. I'll do it a little bit differently. Instead of having the additional lines that you had seen our authors use earlier, I'm going to use one arrow to designate the change that is occurring. Now, we can show a change in the law of demand quite simply by using an arrow to show either a movement downward along the demand curve or a movement upward along the demand curve. And that's a good term to remember. When you get to the multiple choice questions on the quiz and on the test, these three terms go together. The price of the good, the price of Coke, quantity demanded of Coke, and a movement along the demand curve. Those terms all go together. So if the price of Coke were to fall from $5 down to $4, I would simply draw an arrow downward going from point A to point B. That movement shows us actually two things. It shows, number one, the price falling from $5 to $4. But remember, because of that inverse relationship, when price falls, quantity demanded is going to go up. We see those quantity demanded figures getting bigger. At $5 you bought 10 of these things. Now at $4 you're buying 20. So quantity demanded rose actually when that price dropped. We could show a movement upward along the curve for those times when price is rising. If the price was going from, I'm just kind of right in the way of that, if the price is going from $1 up to $2, again I can simply show an arrow moving upward along the curve to designate that change. And again, because there is that inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded, when price rises, quantity demanded actually drops. And sometimes, I know that kind of seems counterintuitive, right? We hear something dropping, so you might think initially that the arrow is going to be going in a different direction. But again, because this is going up, this is falling, they move in an opposite direction. And that really is the law of demand. In a nutshell, here's what we find. When the price rises, quantity demanded falls, everything else held constant. When the price falls, quantity demanded rises, everything else held constant. Stay tuned, we'll have a couple other videos that deal with the determinants of demand coming up soon.